I think if someone had asked me a month ago what would happen to me, I would never have believed it. Because what happened in my life is real nonsense. My wife helped her boss sign million-dollar contracts, but at what cost? As I scanned the restaurant, searching for the client I was supposed to meet, I spotted my ex-wife, Susan. She was sitting with a slightly heavy-set middle-aged man. You could tell he had once been in good shape, but time and indulgence in good food had clearly taken their toll. Susan was right by his side, and it was obvious he was basking in the moment. The guy practically radiated wealth. Standing in the foyer, looking at her, a flood of memories came rushing back. It had been 3 years since our divorce, yet all the emotions resurfaced as if no time had passed. This is how I found myself standing here today, on the outside looking in, instead of being the one sitting next to her. In the end, she got what she wanted, as you'll soon understand. My troubles began when I had to head to Albany for a meeting with a client. I decided to make it an overnight trip so I wouldn't have to endure the long drive back. An hour into the drive, my client called to tell me he had been in a minor accident, but was fine. He apologized for canceling last minute, and I reassured him it was no problem, we could reschedule. Honestly, I wasn't looking forward to the extra 2 hours on the road anyway. So I decided to make the best of it and head home for a romantic dinner with my beautiful wife. I wanted to surprise her. After an hour and a half, I finally drove down my street. The first thing that caught my attention was the presence of 3 unfamiliar cars in the driveway. My wife often invited her friends when I was not at home to keep her company, so I did not attach much importance to this. I parked my car on the street. I entered the house, suspecting nothing unusual, but the first sign that something was wrong was 4 piles of clothes scattered on the living room floor. I froze instantly when I heard my wife scream. The scariest thing was that it wasn't a cry for help. My heart sank when I realized that my wife was sleeping with someone else. My world has collapsed. I didn't want to go upstairs, but I knew I had to. When I got to the top of the stairs, I quietly looked out from behind the bedroom doorway and saw this. My wife was having fun with 3 men, one of whom was her boss, Jeff Davis. I've never liked Jeff, and now I understand why. From their conversation, I realized that this jerk was using my wife to bribe his business clients. The worst thing is that in all the 10 years of our marriage, I have never seen my wife behave like this. I quietly stepped back, unnoticed by their distraction, and went down to my office. I found my digital video camera, and it still had a bit of battery left. Inside, there was an old vacation tape with a small amount of tape remaining as well. I wasn't looking to make a full-length recording, just to document my wife's actions for my lawyer. I quietly went back to my bedroom door and began filming. I got clear shots of my wife's face, and everyone else's too. I only recorded for about 5 to 10 minutes because that was all I could take. Some men might find this situation exciting, but not me. It made me feel sad, weak, and utterly betrayed. Watching my wife behave like this with other men was almost unbearable. I headed downstairs to calm myself and clear my mind. In my study, I opened the safe, retrieved my pistol, and switched off the safety. I'm not a violent person, but at that moment I was ready to fire if anyone acted foolishly. Next, I went to the living room and took all the car keys and wallets from the pants the men had left on my floor. I went outside and flattened all their tires, including those on Sue's car. When I came back inside, a smile spread across my face, the kind even the Grinch would envy. A brilliant plan started forming in my mind, and I knew it would work if Sue picked up her cell phone. I had noticed it on the bedroom nightstand while I was filming. I grabbed my camera, positioned myself behind the staircase, and speed-dialed Sue's cell. It rang a few times before going to voicemail. She knew I'd be calling around this time, so I redialed every couple of minutes until she finally picked up. She must have told everyone to be quiet because the house went completely silent. "Hey, Bobby, how's Albany?" Sue asked, sounding out of breath. I could hear faint chuckles from the men in the background. "You sound out of breath. Everything okay?" I asked, feigning concern. "Yeah, I just had to run upstairs to grab my phone," she quickly covered. "My client canceled, so I'll be home in just a few minutes. Thought we might go out for dinner?" I said, keeping my voice calm, though I was angrier than I'd ever been. "You're coming home now?" she asked, her voice uneasy. "That sounds great. I just need to get ready, baby. See you soon." She rattled it off quickly and hung up before I could respond. I couldn't help but laugh, knowing exactly what was about to happen. Sure enough, within a minute, 4 completely knack-deep people were scrambling down my stairs into the living room. The men dressed at lightning speed, and Sue hurriedly threw on her clothes, straightening them out as best she could. All the men rushed out together, with Sue shoving shoes and a jacket out after them. She peeked outside, hoping they'd leave before I pulled up. If she wasn't so flustered, she might have noticed my car parked right outside our house. The men started yelling at her all at once, so she went out on the porch to hear what they were talking about. At that moment, I closed the front door and locked it behind her. My wife caught a glimpse of my face as I was closing the door. She tried to look out the side window and spoke to me. Her voice was full of despair, but the time for talking had passed. The other men returned to my porch and pounded on the door for several minutes. I knew they wanted to take their wallets and keys. I called 911 and reported that outsiders were trying to break into my house. The dispatcher mentioned that one of my neighbors had just called her. I gave my name and address. Just a couple of minutes later, a police car arrived. I waited for the police to question my wife before I went outside to talk to the 2 police officers who were at the scene. "Officers, these people attacked my wife, and I want them all arrested," I told them. This caused an immediate reaction from the men, who began shouting things like, "I was invited," "She wanted it herself," "I didn't attack anyone," and "She wanted it herself." Everyone, including me, looked at Sue, waiting for an explanation. She avoided eye contact and confessed in a low, shamefaced voice. "I invited these men to my house. None of them attacked me. I did it of my own free will." The men seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, knowing that they would not face any charges. At about the same time, 2 more police cars arrived. At my request, they wrote down the names of everyone to draw up a protocol. Then a senior police officer told me, "If your wife invited these men to her house and they are all over 18 years old, there is little we can do. Maybe you should see a psychologist or something like that." He said this while looking at my wife as if she were dirt under his shoe. I asked the police to call a taxi, and Mrs. Thomas was not allowed to return to the property that night. One of the men called a taxi, as they found that all their tires were punctured. They also tried to accuse me of taking their wallets and keys, but I told the cops that I had no idea what they were talking about. I turned and headed back to the porch, and Sue stayed with the men until the taxi pulled up. I stood on the porch, my eyes burning with anger. My wife bravely approached to speak with me, which took courage given the tension of the moment. If she had known just how furious I was and that I had my gun drawn, she might have turned and fled. "Bobby, I am so sorry for—" She began to apologize, but I cut her off immediately. "You broke my heart, and I will never forgive you. Jeff used to call you a girl of easy virtue, and I think that's fitting. From now on, I will refer to you as a girl of easy virtue and never use your real name again. If you ever need to reach out to me, do so through Tad." With those final words, I went inside the house and locked the door, leaving her standing there. She returned to the group in tears, and Jeff attempted to comfort her. She pushed him away, and for some reason, That made me feel a bit better. My positive mood quickly evaporated when I returned to my bedroom and remembered what had happened there. I started smashing up the whole room. I picked up the mattress and threw it on the lawn in front of the house. Then I went to the garage to get my toolbox. I began to disassemble the bed, throwing its parts on the lawn in front of the house along with the mattress box. Back in the bedroom, I picked up Sue's cell phone from the floor. I looked through her contact list and messages. As expected, she had emails, photos, and even videos of her having fun with men I didn't know. Judging by the photos, she was well acquainted with them. I began searching for trash bags to collect all of her clothes and couldn't help but laugh at myself. I was trying to be thoughtful, but those days were behind me. I hauled every drawer from our bedroom downstairs, placing each drawer's contents into separate piles on the front lawn. Next, I moved on to her extra belongings in the guest room. That's when I encountered my next surprise. I transported each dresser drawer from the guest room to the lawn, just as I had with Sue's bedroom items. The very last bottom drawer was stuck and wouldn't fully open. Frustrated, I vented my anger on the drawer, pulling forcefully until I heard the plastic crack. I then pushed the drawer inward and tried to open it slowly. It finally popped open, revealing the cause of the problem. Beneath the drawer were 7 or 8 DVD discs. I had broken one of the plastic cases, but the disc itself was still in good condition. My mood dropped again when I looked at the discs. I never thought I could feel worse, but I don't. Going down the stairs, I read the names of the discs, and none of them brought me joy. I went into the living room and inserted each of them to look at. On the first disc, Sue was presented with her best friend Sarah at Sarah's house. Sue was supposed to help her with the Avon parties every Tuesday and Thursday, at least that's what I thought. Instead, they were having fun with several men at her house. I started crying, but stopped when I saw the last 2 discs. In the first one, Sue was having fun with her tennis instructor during classes that I paid for. She came every Saturday and always came back too exhausted. Now I really understand why. On the second disc, Sue was having fun at her desk in the boardroom with Jeff, her boss, and Jeff's boss, Bill Evans. Bill was an important person in society, and his photos always appeared in the newspapers on the occasion of an event. I took out a large envelope and put in it a cell phone, CDs, and a cassette that I had shot earlier. I planned to give the entire envelope to my lawyer and best friend, Ted Worth. We've been friends for as long as I can remember. He was one of the only 2 people in the world I really trusted, and the other one didn't matter anymore. I looked at the computer desk and saw Sue's computer. I pressed the space bar and it came to life. I made copies of everything that was on the computer. I copied all the files, emails, photos, and videos. It took about an hour to copy everything, and then I sat down and started browsing my wife's computer. There were videos similar to the ones I found on the discs. Then I started reading her emails from the last 6 months. She tried to hide them under some obscure file name, but I was able to find them. She had several messages from Jeff and other men, while the rest were correspondence between her and Sarah. The correspondence continued until last week, when I read one email that almost stunned me. I thought about using my gun, but realized that it wasn't worth it. I had to stay strong. What upset me the most was Sue's email to Sarah. Sarah asked her why she hadn't broken off her relationship with me and become single again. She also asked Sue to give a perfect description of what she wants from her future husband. That's her answer. Sarah: right now, I don't want to take any action concerning him. Bobby is as loyal as he is not very bright. However, I believe it's only a matter of time before he uncovers my hidden lifestyle. He's not completely clueless, just blind to love. Lately, he hasn't been taking care of himself. His belly is growing bigger each day. Sometimes it's hard to find him attractive, especially when I compare him to the attractive men we're involved with. I also dislike his beard and mustache. They make him look honestly, a bit unappealing. I suppose I did love him once, but the excitement I've experienced over the past few years is too compelling to give up. His best friend is a lawyer, and if he becomes involved, things could get complicated. Jeff and Bill at work are hinting about a promotion and a salary increase, plus some personal perks, LOL. I also want to secure at least a house and a car. If I handle it well, I might even receive some monthly alimony on top. I'm excited for our Tuesday party. I'll try to make it if I can still walk after my tennis injury, LOL. Man, Tony is amazing. Please make sure I get the video from last Thursday. It was the first time I was with so many guys at once. I'm still feeling sore, LOL. As for my ideal man, I'm looking for a wealthy, devoted one who is easy to manage and who is not particularly intelligent. He should be ready to do whatever I ask whenever I want, and still ignore some things, ha ha ha. I'm not worried about our intimate life as long as he doesn't have any problems with it, ha ha ha. I can get everything I need anywhere, outside the house, which sometimes seems almost an easy task. Bobby's home right now, so I have to go. See you on Tuesday. Call me. Sue, BFF. I went over the letter so many times that I could nearly recite it from memory. The terms gross and past few years hurt me more deeply than words can express. Did she truly feel this way about me? Had I been so blind in love that she was seeing someone else behind my back for over 2 years? After reading it, I went to bed and ended up sleeping on the couch. I woke up early and called in sick to work because I hadn't slept well, constantly tossing and turning. After informing my workplace that I was unwell, I reached out to my best friend, Tad Worth. He was primarily my friend, but he also acted as my lawyer in most situations. Mary picked up the phone. She was Tad's secretary, and I had known her almost as long as I had known Tad. I requested an emergency meeting that morning, but she informed me that Tad would be in court for the entire day. Mary, please tell Tad to meet me at his office in an hour. If he resists, mention the name Tammy Brown to get his attention. I'll see you in an hour, I said before hanging up, preventing her from responding. I began getting dressed when my cell phone rang. I checked the caller ID because I had no intention of talking to Sue. The number was unfamiliar, so I answered, hoping it might be Tad returning my call from somewhere. Hello, Mr. Thomas. This is Bill Evans from Susan's office. I'd like to discuss the incident that occurred last night at your house. If possible, please come to my office today so we can resolve this matter for everyone involved. I wasn't sure if he knew I had video evidence of him being with my wife at his workplace, but I knew he was concerned about Jeff Davis's 2 major clients. Additionally, my wife and Jeff were important to him, and I doubt he wanted to lose such valuable employees. I also knew he was worried about negative publicity for his company and himself personally. Mr. Evans, I have an important meeting this morning, but I promise I'll call you back at this number before noon to arrange something for today. I replied calmly. My tone was steady, making it seem like he could negotiate with me. Little did he know he was in for a big surprise. When I stepped outside, I could still see what seemed like a very odd yard sale. Sue's broken bed and all her clothes were still scattered outside. An older neighbor gave me a small wave with a peculiar expression on his face. I realized I would quickly become a short-lived topic, as they say in the media. It was a tight-knit neighborhood. I drove downtown and grabbed something to eat. I forced myself to eat and headed straight to Tad's office. Mary had a cup of coffee waiting for me, lots of cream and no sugar, showing how well we really knew each other. Holy shit, Bobby. I don't know what you've done to Tad, but when I mentioned his name, he told me to cancel all appointments today. I could use a month's vacation if you're willing to tell me who Tammy Brown is, she said jokingly. You'll have to ask Tad. By the way, where is he? I asked. He said he'll be right here. He needed to reschedule today's court session with the judge, she replied. Just then, he walked through the door. Holy shit, Bobby. Tammy Brown. You must be in serious trouble to bring up that name to me. Come into the office and let's talk. Mary, hold all my calls for now, Tad said quickly. I grabbed my coffee and he shut the door so we could have a conversation. I recounted the events from the previous night and shared what I discovered about Sue's new lifestyle. Then I handed him the envelope containing all the evidence I had gathered, prompting him to finally speak. He listened to my account without interrupting. I could tell he was already formulating legal strategies as I detailed what had happened last night. I also mentioned that Bill Evans had requested a meeting for today. Well, Bobby, let's prioritize things, as they say. I've known you for a long time and I understand you're devastated. Is there any chance you'll reconcile with Sue? He inquired. Tad, if we were talking about Kathy, Tad's wife, and you saw those videos and read the emails, you'd have ended things immediately. I want a divorce, but I also want to inflict significant damage. I'm not going to go quietly into that good night, I admitted. All right, first we'll file a lawsuit against Tony and the Ace Tennis Club. We can't take legal action against Sarah since she's just a close friend who hangs out with Sue. Sue's business is a separate issue. Secondly, I intend to sue the 2 clients who were at your house, along with their companies. We're also targeting Jeff Davis, Bill Evans, and their company. He continued. This situation is going to become messy before it improves, Bobby, he warned me. I don't care if I have to stand in the street and fight. I'm determined to make these people pay for screwing me over, especially Sue. I responded, my voice filled with anger. All right, Bobby, remind me once more what Bill Evans was after, and we'll start from there, Tad said to me. We explored several different strategies, and I preferred the last one the most. Launching a direct, full-scale attack on Sue's company seemed like the best option. I had a trump card, the video recording of Davis, Evans, and Sue in their boardroom. Tad explained that as Sue's supervisors, they had authority over her position. This could also potentially lead to significant jail time for them. I found that appealing. Tad also suggested that once St. Bill discovered our evidence against him, his stance would change and he might offer some money. I responded that if it was less than $2 million, he could forget about it. Here's what, Tad. Make it $2.5 million. I've seen your legal fees before, I said with a laugh. Join us tonight at 7 p.m., and Kathy will prepare a nice meal for both of us. I think you need a break from being stuck at home, he insisted. I returned Bill Evans's call and scheduled a meeting for 2 p.m. Shortly after, Mary peeked into the office. Tad, you have a call on line 1, she informed him. Mary, I told you no calls, he snapped, clearly angry. Sorry, Tad, but it's Susan. She wants to speak with you, and I thought you might want to take it, Mary continued. Sorry, Mary, it's been a long day, and it's only getting worse. Does she know Bobby is here? He asked. Not that I'm aware of, Tad, she replied. Tell her I'll speak to her in a minute, he said more gently as Mary quickly left for the other office. Well, I bet she's found her cell phone, computer, and all the DVD discs missing by now. I bet she's furious that I left all her stuff on the front lawn along with our bed, I told him. Wow, you really had a hectic evening. Let me handle the conversation and try not to get involved. As your attorney, I need to clarify a few matters right away, he suggested as he took the first line. I began to overhear the one-sided dialogue, but I could almost understand what she was telling Tad without actually listening to her speak. Hello, Susan, this is Tad. Yes, I've already spoken to him. Bobby is a fantastic person and my friend. I assumed you, more than anyone, would support him and not betray him. No excuses, Sue. I'm not in the mood, and yes, I will represent him. He has a strong case. You know things are going to get complicated, don't you? I will talk to him. But you destroyed a man who was always loyal to you and loved you deeply. I don't think he cares about your opinion anymore. My best advice is to hire a good lawyer. You'll need one. Yes, Bill Evans has arranged a meeting for 2 p.m. However, I don't think you should attend. Listen, Sue. If you even show up at the office entrance and try to eavesdrop with a glass, I'll tell Bobby to leave and everything will fall apart. It's better to stay out of it and keep to yourself today. I know he left your things on the lawn, but just as you can let strangers into your bedroom, he can throw your stuff out onto the front yard. Honestly, I'm surprised he didn't harm anyone last night. Oh yes, he had it on him, but only for self-defense. He thought you were being assaulted, remember? The police report mentioned that. I don't know, but if it had been my Kathy, I'd be in jail right now. I think, given the circumstances, he was agitated. As for your computer, cell phone, and any other items that weren't inside the house this morning, you'll need to speak with the other homeowner. He may have left everything on the lawn along with your clothes, and someone might have taken them. I can't be certain. I handled all the escrow matters for the house, and both of you have equal rights to it. How you decide to use those rights is up to each of you individually. All right, I'll let him know. For now, I suggest you stay there and allow Bobby to remain at the house until everything is sorted out. I don't think it's safe for you to be in the same house with him at the moment. Sue, I'm so frustrated that I could punch you right now, so don't push me. Stay at Sarah's place and I'll keep in touch. Please have your lawyer reach out to me once you have one. Crying won't do you any good right now, Sue. Besides being his lawyer, I'm also his friend. Your tears aren't being heard. I can be extremely harsh when I choose to, and this seems like the perfect time. I've always liked and respected you until today. I'm sorry you'll now see a side of me that only my enemies and adversaries get to see. You won't like it. Okay, but stay away from him and remain in your office. He doesn't want anything to do with you right now. Goodbye. Tad finished and looked up at me. I think you heard most of that? He asked me sadly. Yeah, I just wish I could face her again and express how I truly feel. However, I don't think I want to go through the pain of seeing her again, at least not right now, I confessed to my friend. Here's what you can do, Bobby. Do two things for me, he said, his mood instantly shifting to a positive and optimistic tone. Pull out these videos for me. Tad asked me to take the video from last night, the video of Tony at the tennis club, and the video of Sue with Mr. Davis and Mr. Evans at her office from the envelope. I handed him the 3 videos, and he told me to take Mary out to lunch on him. I gave him a strange look, and he responded in kind. I think it would be better if I handle these reviews myself to avoid upsetting everyone before our 2 p.m. meeting. I don't believe reviewing this material would benefit you right now, and I don't want you getting frustrated before we even meet with Bill Evans. I knew he was right, so I thanked him and shared the good news with Mary. She suggested that I take her somewhere fancy if Tad was covering the cost. I laughed, and we both left the building. Mary was an excellent lunch companion, and she made me forget all my worries for the next hour. When we came back, I heard Tad shouting and making a fuss as we entered the office. As we stepped inside, he was in high spirits, performing a celebratory dance by his desk. "This tape is amazing, Bobby. I can't believe it," he exclaimed to me. I wore a strange and saddened expression, and I think he finally understood why. "Oh, Bobby, I'm truly sorry. I wasn't celebrating the videos. I know Sue has really hurt you. I was just excited because of something I recently discovered," he confessed to me. "Bobby, come over here. I need you to take a look at something," Tad asked, and I followed his request by standing right behind him so I could see over his shoulder. "Did you watch the entire tape that Tony filmed of the tennis club activities with Sue?" he questioned. "No, I only saw part of it. I was trying to go through all the tapes last night without getting sick or losing my temper," I replied honestly. "Well, I have a big surprise for you. As soon as Tony and Sue finish, a small crowd begins to gather in the men's locker room of the tennis club. I'm embarrassed to mention it, but after Tony finished, she let the other men who were watching join them. I'm not telling you this to make you angry or upset, but because of that man over there." Ted shared this with me, pointing at the screen on his desk. The person he was pointing at was an elderly man wrapped in a towel. He had long gray hair and a walrus mustache. He asked me if I recognized him. Ted turned on the video playback. "Ted, I have no idea who this jerk is, but I guess you know," I answered him wisely. "Bobby, this is for our meeting at the tennis club today at 4 p.m., he informed me. Ted was excited, and then he explained to me why. I smiled when he told me about his plan. Besides being my friend, Ted was also an excellent lawyer. I was glad that he was on my side this time. We departed his office to head downtown for our 2 p.m. meeting with Bill Evans. We took along a portable DVD player, some still photos Tad had printed before we left, and several envelopes that looked official. Upon entering Sue's building, we went straight to Bill's office on the top floor, while Sue's office was one floor below. We waited in the lounge area until we were invited into Mr. Evans' office. Just before I entered, I had the sensation that someone was watching me. I glanced down the hallway and saw a woman slip around a corner as soon as she noticed me looking. I thought to myself, "Can you guess who that was?" I was simply relieved that I wouldn't have to deal with her today. We both walked into Bill's office, which was adorned with luxurious furniture. Every wall was decorated with plaques, awards, or photographs of renowned individuals alongside Bill Evans. His office was impressive, and the first thought that crossed my mind was whether he had slept with Sue in this very room. This notion intensified my dislike for Mr. Evans more than ever. I introduced Tad and took the lead in the conversation. "Hello, Mr. Evans. This is Tad Worth, a friend of mine, and he will be attending the meeting you scheduled today," I said to Bill as we all shook hands. "Mr. Thomas, Bob, I was under the impression this would be a small, private meeting between the two of us," Mr. Evans responded. "Well, I decided to bring Tad along. Whatever you say to me, you can say to him as well," I replied. I didn't leave it open for discussion, so he accepted Tad's presence and began addressing me directly, ignoring Tad. This made Tad smile. I anticipated what was coming, but allowed Mr. Evans to proceed before we could deflate his plans. "Bob, may I call you Bob?" Bill inquired. "Absolutely. I also thought it might be beneficial to have Jeff Davis present at this meeting. I'm not sure if that's feasible, but this matter involves him as well," I informed Mr. Evans. He paused for a moment and pressed the intercom button. "Julie, please inform Jeff that I need him in my office immediately. Tell him to stop whatever he's doing and come here right away." "All right, Jeff should be here shortly. In the meantime, I want to express my apologies for all the difficulties Jeff and Sue have caused in your life. I understand last night must have been awful, but if we collaborate, we might be able to assist everyone involved," Bill said optimistically. "So what are you proposing, Mr. Evans?" I asked, waiting for Jeff to arrive. "I have a great deal of respect for your wife Sue and—" Bill began, but was cut off as Jeff entered the room. Jeff froze, seemingly ready to leave, but Bill commanded him to sit down. Reluctantly, Jeff took a seat and avoided looking at me entirely. "Jeff, I was just saying that I hold Sue in high regard, almost like a daughter," Bill continued, only to be interrupted by Tad. "Are you saying, Mr. Evans, that you also like this kind of action?" Ted asked, completely catching him off guard. I chuckled to myself because I understood the true meaning of Ted's remark. "What did you say? Do I like it? What the hell are you talking about?" Mr. Evans replied to Ted with genuine anger. "Let me show you. As they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words," Ted replied, putting the DVD player on Bill's desk. "This is footage from the video you're watching now." Ted handed the photos to Jeff, not Bill. Jeff's eyes widened in shock, and he slowly handed them to Bill. The photos clearly showed Bill and Jeff with my wife, which left no doubt about who was in the pictures and what they were doing. I even think Bill recognized the boardroom table where he and Sue used to hang out. Jeff, are you seriously telling me that you were so foolish as to record this on video and even distribute copies? Bill asked, almost at a loss for words. It was clear that Jeff didn't have an answer at that moment and was completely tongue-tied. Well, Mr. Evans, this is how things are going to proceed. By the way, I am both Bobby's lawyer and his friend, so let me explain what we want and how we expect you to handle it. Tad addressed the stunned audience. I enjoyed every second of it. Firstly, Sue will retain her position, period. Bobby believes she will need her job, and she seems to get along very well with everyone here, he said to Bill with a slight wink. Secondly, Mr. Davis here is not expected to return, period. Sue stays, and this individual is out. Tad informed Bill as he pointed to a stunned Jeff. Thirdly, we want you to present us with a financial offer that doesn't undervalue our intelligence. We will consider only your initial proposal and respond with a yes or no within 5 business days. We had planned to take this to court within 2 months, or possibly even sooner if necessary. Before they could respond, Ted pressed the play button and turned the screen so Bill could see it. The footage repeatedly showed both men having fun with my wife in the conference room. Jeff didn't need to watch, as he was in charge of recording the video. Bill just stared at him, stunned, his mind clearly racing. I could tell that he was trying to figure out how to protect his business, reputation, family life, and, most importantly, his finances. It was obvious that something was going to break soon. Jeff, as soon as these gentlemen leave, we need to have a very serious conversation about your future here, Bill announced as if talking to himself. I'll consult with my lawyer to see if we can negotiate a settlement that will satisfy you, Ted. You both understand that if this information leaks out before my proposal is submitted, it could have disastrous consequences for the business. Ted replied, Don't worry, Mr. Evans. We will keep your secret until we receive a serious offer from you. However, I would not be in a hurry to fire Mr. Davis yet. He may have additional copies of the video that he can use as leverage if we don't comply. You and Mr. Davis can work this out between yourselves. In addition, you both face imprisonment for having an affair with an employee whom you directly control in matters of employment and promotion. When we were about to leave, Ted took the DVD player and the photos we had brought with us. We came out just as Bill and Jeff were about to have a private conversation. I wanted to ask Ted something, but he told me to keep quiet until we were outside. I had no idea that my wife was lurking around the corner and eavesdropping on our conversation, but Ted noticed her. The last thing I heard was Mr. Evans shouting through Julie's intercom, demanding, "Get Sue Thomas in here immediately." I couldn't help but smile, anticipating an enjoyable meeting. Bill was about to discover that I had found his DVD at our home. Once we were outside, I questioned him about why he had given Jeff an escape by advising him to use his own videotape against Bill. Divide and conquer, as they always say, Tad explained. It's better if they don't work as a team and instead look out for themselves. That way, if Bill makes a ridiculous offer, we can counter it with something equally absurd. I also know that Jeff and Bill have families and attend church. Their videos might not show it, but they prefer not to disrupt their family lives right now. Tad wisely shared his thoughts. As I exited the building, it dawned on me that this place had now become the site of my wife's infidelity rather than the place she took pride in working. This realization saddened me, along with many other troubling thoughts swirling in my mind. Tad helped me snap back to reality. All right, let's grab a beer before our next meeting at the tennis club at 4 p.m. We both need one right now, and I have something to ask you, though I'm not quite sure how yet, Tad said as we drove across town toward the tennis club. We pulled into a cozy bar and restaurant near the club. Tad ordered 2 beers and began to speak. Bobby, I believe Bill Evans will come forward with an offer, but it will likely be just under $1 million. I'm familiar with his legal team from another firm, and they're very competent. The lead attorney is also a pragmatic person. I plan to call him tomorrow and suggest that a lowball offer could negatively impact his client's business and family life. I'll recommend they propose around $3 million or abandon the deal entirely, he informed me. Next, I need to know if the offer falls through, which is possible. If that happens, can I tarnish Susan's reputation? I won't treat her kindly at all. I can only do what I believe will win the case. Representing you legally in that scenario would be an unpleasant task. It might become ugly and highly public. I'll utilize all the resources at my disposal to win our case. You might dislike the details that could be exposed publicly about Sue, your marriage, and potentially your private life. I'll make her appear as the immoral person she has become. I'm not sure if you've considered this at all, Tad added at the last moment. Yes, I have thought about it. I'm a stronger person than anyone here realizes. If it's necessary, you have my approval. I prefer to pursue the financial offer route before things escalate too much, I hinted to Tad. All right, we'll first see what St. Bill proposes to you. If it's inadequate, I'll file all the required paperwork that very day. I'll also leverage my newspaper contacts and friends at the 3 local news stations. They'd be interested in some sample video clips or photos, even if they need to censor explicit content, as they say on Monty Python. Tad, you've always supported me and I trust your judgment. I just wish none of this had happened. It was more enjoyable being the oblivious husband than becoming the public embarrassment of a cheating wife. You still have my permission to do whatever is necessary. After all, I didn't start this mess, but I'll be putting an end to it soon, I told him, my voice filled with anger. Okay, Bobby, no problem. Now let's review the materials for our next meeting. This guy, Mr. Harry Rydell, owns the Ace Tennis Club. He's the person I identified in the video at my office, he informed me. He'll likely say that adults will handle it and that there's nothing he can do for us. Even Tony, the tennis coach, might be fired just for appearances. He could then rehire him the following week. I checked, and Tony is very popular there, especially with the women, if you know what I mean. He might bring him back to save face with the club members. But remember, Bobby, mostly the men pay the club dues, and the women do as well. Don't forget that, because it will be important when negotiating with Mr. Rydell. He explained how things stood. We arrived right on schedule, and it was clear that Mr. Rydell and Tad harbored mutual dislike. For the first time, Rydell chose to speak up. All right, Worth, since you called this meeting, go ahead and finish. I want to wrap this up as quickly as possible. Mr. Rydell addressed Tad without any semblance of kindness. Tad responded, Mr. Rydell, this is Bob Thomas, he said, nodding towards me, and his wife is a member of your club. We've learned that Tony Simba, your tennis instructor, has been involved in an affair with Mr. Thomas's wife. What actions do you intend to take regarding this? He concluded, then waited for Rydell to respond. Even I could sense that Rydell would likely deflect and dismiss Tad rudely. Listen, what 2 adults do in the privacy of their own homes is their business. I'm not their mother, Worth, so stop wasting my time, Harry Rydell retorted together. Regarding you, Mr. Thomas, if you can't satisfy your wife in the bedroom, don't come to me and blame me if she cheats on you. There are many unhappy wives at the Ace Tennis Club. Some keep returning because of the personalized service my staff provides, if you catch my drift, Harry added, giving me a wink. I felt like throwing a punch, but Tad grabbed my wrist and whispered for me to stay calm and follow his lead. You see, Harry, you're assuming that this affair happened off the club grounds and without the owner's knowledge or approval. That assumption is incorrect, Harry, Tad replied as he took out a DVD player and placed it on his desk. He pressed play and directed the screen towards Harry. The moment came when Harry started having fun with my wife. It was clear that he was unhappy with watching the video. Before Harry could answer, Ted spoke up. Harry, with the full knowledge and complicity of your colleague, you exploited a paid member of your club. Mrs. Susan Thomas, a married woman, has paid the membership fees to Mr. Thomas, who is present here. He's very upset at the moment," Ted informed the extremely calm Mr. Rydell. "If this becomes public, all men, especially those who pay to participate, will want to know if their wives are cheating on them while they pay the expenses. I'm going to have to subpoena everyone who was in the locker room that day." "I'm not sure married men would like that," Ted continued, and there was a note of storytelling in his voice. "I also almost forgot to mention the reasonable expectations of confidentiality regarding any video recording in the locker room. Harry, once I'm done with you, your club will no longer be the guiding light of the community, and I also believe that in the near future, your financial resources will decrease," Ted concluded, adding concluding remarks. "So what we're asking for is for you to present us with a serious proposal and respond promptly. If you handle this swiftly, it could prevent you significant embarrassment and financial loss," Tad finally concluded. It was clear that Harry Rydell was contemplating his options. "Tad, as always, you're a real jerk. However, I can't dispute your reasoning. I'll call you tomorrow with my offer. If I comply, all the tapes will be returned to me and will never see the light of day. I'll fire Tony as a gesture of good faith. Now, if that's all you legal blackmailers were after, get out," Harry Rydell told us, as Tad grabbed the DVD player with a grin and turned it off. "By the way, tell Tito Martinez I said hello," Tad mentioned to Harry as he left the room. "Go fuck yourself, Worth," was Harry's only response. Tad laughed all the way back to the parking lot. "That was quite entertaining, so now we wait for the offers to come in," Tad said to me as we headed to his house for a delicious home-cooked meal. By the end of the week, this is what happened. Bill Evans offered just under $2.7 million and agreed to keep Sue employed. Jeff Davis was fired after he foolishly handed all his videotapes to Bill Evans, leaving him with no evidence. As a result, Bill terminated his employment, and there wasn't much the unfortunate Jeff could do. I targeted the two assholes who were with my wife the night I caught her with Jeff. They were Jeff's two major clients. Neither wanted any publicity for their companies or themselves, so each offered me $1 million to back off. Harry Rydell refused to make any offers and challenged us to take him to court. We did, and he ended up losing $3 million when our case was concluded. He received numerous inquiries about the affairs happening at the club, causing him to lose half his membership and forcing him to offer discounts to the remaining members. I think he believed he could get away with it, but the judge disapproved of secretly videotaping in private locker rooms. Additionally, he didn't tolerate people having affairs with other people's wives. I gave Sue the house and the car she wanted without having to pay her any alimony. I only appeared before her twice in court, and each time I greeted her by calling her a girl of easy virtue, which made her cry. I've always wondered why she chose to cry then, instead of before she caused all the turmoil in my life. Despite going through the worst period of my life, I ended up with the most money I've ever had. I was smart and invested it based on Tad's advice. The pain still hurts, and I've been carrying it with me ever since. All the events from that dreadful year flashed back to me suddenly. I didn't realize someone was speaking to me until I snapped out of my memory nightmare and heard the restaurant manager ask if he could help. I wasn't sure how long I stood there, frozen and lost in the past. I shook my head to clear it and found myself back in the restaurant. "I'm sorry, I was just thinking about a problem I had before. I see the party I came to attend, so thanks again," I told the manager as he gave me that odd look you give to someone who seems out of it. With determination, I walked straight up to my wife's table. I believe the unexpected event affected her first. In my previous marriage to Susan, I was overweight with long hair and a beard. I neglected my appearance due to a persistent knee problem from an old baseball injury. That's what I told myself at the time. But in reality, I had simply grown comfortable with my life and my wife. Now I had short hair, was fit from working out regularly, and my knee had been fixed thanks to the compensation I received from Jeff and Bill's company. My suits were now expensive, and I always made an effort to look good in public. I decided to start the conversation. "You look amazing tonight, a girl of easy virtue." "I almost forgot how beautiful you are," I said, trying to provoke her. I still knew how to get under her skin, and I was doing it intentionally. "My name is Susan, Bobby. Why don't you use it?" She responded angrily. "Hey, I didn't name you a girl of easy virtue. You know who did that. I just think it's fitting. I told you 3 years ago that you broke my heart, and I would always address you by that name." I explained this as the man next to her began to object and stand up. Sue pushed him back into his seat, telling him not to cause a scene. She started to cry slightly, and her makeup began to smudge. Her date said, "Go powder your nose, Sue, and fix your pretty face. I'll handle this asshole for you." With that, she stood up, looked me in the eyes, and I met her gaze. I must have conveyed all the pain I had been carrying for the past 3 years in that single look. She began crying even harder. I was surprised that she still had any feelings for me, or perhaps she still felt guilty. I think it was a mix of both. She looked at me with tears streaming down her face and said, "I expect you to be gone when I return." As she wiped her eyes and headed to the ladies' room, I noticed the large engagement ring on her wedding finger. "Are you Bob Thomas, Sue's ex-husband?" he asked me with a tone of disdain. "Yes, and you must be a girl of easy virtue's latest dream come true," I replied, noticing his anger building. "I'm Peter, Sue's fiancé, and you should stop referring to her that way if I were you," he responded, trying to sound confident but clearly unwilling to create a scene. "I did that so we could talk privately. I have 3 questions for you, and then I'll be out of your life for good," I told him, which made him look puzzled. "I was once in your position, and I just didn't want someone else to suffer my fate again. I assume a girl of easy virtue told you that I was a terrible husband, that I beat her, neglected her, or was a womanizer?" I asked, seeing that she had been spreading those exact rumors. "Well, I'm not here to defend my reputation to you. Honestly, I don't think it would help. I just wanted to know if Sarah was still hosting her Avon parties at her house on Tuesdays and Thursdays," I inquired. "Sue helps Sarah on Mondays and Wednesdays, selling at her jewelry parties. Shows how much you remember," he snapped back at me. "Okay, is she still taking tennis lessons on Saturdays?" I quickly asked. "Sue plays racquetball on Sundays. Boy, you have a terrible memory for being married to her for so long," he said triumphantly. "All right, one last question. Have you ever checked under the bottom drawer of the dresser in your guest room?" I quickly asked again. "No, why would I?" he responded. "The 3 questions I posed are the reasons we're no longer together. I still have everything from the divorce in my office, legal documents, emails from Sarah and a girl of easy virtue, and hours of video recordings. I've kept all of this with me for the past 3 years, so I thought you should have it," I explained, pulling an old folded piece of paper from my wallet. "This is what a girl of easy virtue wrote to Sarah when she asked about getting rid of me before I discovered a girl of easy virtue was cheating on me. After reading that email, I didn't know her at all, and I probably still don't. But it's all about you," I said as I handed him the paper. I knew Sue very well, and was aware that she was a creature of habit. She always did things the same way every time, which sometimes drove me crazy. I also had a feeling that even with a new man, she would continue her usual behaviors. He seemed hesitant to take the paper, but curiosity eventually got the better of him. He reached out and opened the email. I had held on to it for the past 3 years, occasionally reading it and trying to improve my life so that no woman would ever write such things about me again. Among all the videotapes and other evidence I uncovered, that email hurt the most. That's probably why I kept it. This is the same email I mentioned earlier in my story. Peter slowly read the letter and placed it on the table. He took out a pen, quickly wrote a note on it, and left the restaurant, much to my surprise. No backward glance, no thank you, nothing. He was completely expressionless. I bent down to see what he had written on her old email. "Sue, I'm heading back to the house for a moment. Please stay here, and I'll call you in about 15 minutes. Wait here for me. For some odd reason, I need to check the bottom drawer of the dresser in the guest room. I'll be right back." Peter. I realized he had come to a realization, even if he wasn't pleased with it. Something told me I had probed too deeply on all three questions. The email was the breaking point, and I believe he needed to see it for himself. I left the note on Sue's table setting and departed. I had no intention of staying at that restaurant tonight with anyone. I returned to the foyer and called my client. They mentioned they were running late and didn't mind rescheduling. Just before leaving, I glanced back at the table. Sue had returned and was searching for Peter. She sat down, reviewed her old email, and read Peter's note below it. Her face turned pale as she recognized her previous email and what Peter had written to her. The last time I saw my wife, she was crying so intensely that the entire restaurant was watching her. I felt sorry for her, but also no longer cared. That was the last time I ever saw her. I still wonder if Peter found anything in the dresser drawer. Sue's crying suggested he might have.